Today's agenda is to have a discussion and action on a claim for the release of funds in the amount of $362,719 from the Geothermal Asset Fund for the development of a comprehensive dispersion and plume modeling program. The updated dispersion models will provide guidance regarding the likely impacts of hydrogen sulfide releases and assist in the development of effective emergency response plans, assist in the location of future fixed air modeling equipment, and inform researchers chosen to conduct the upcoming Puna health study on patterns of dispersion and potential exposure.
We're going to bring the applicants.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we do have representatives of the Hawaii County Civil Defense in the audience, so at your leisure, you may bring them forward.
Having reviewed all the documentation that I think are before you, and having an opportunity to go out to the PGV plant last week with the chief and other members from Civil Defense Agency, and an opportunity to also review the current plans on the shelf for the PGV and all that, I've got to say I'm very, very comfortable in what this proposal is going to do. I think, for one, of prime importance is how the community will benefit from this proposal. As a matter of fact, the chief tells me that this was really community-based planning, the outcome of which was to have a recommendation for a research and study and an upgraded air quality model program. It really came from the community. In the 2-year period that the study or research will take place by Dr. Steve Bussinger, University of Hawaii Manoa, who, by the way, is seated also in this particular room, we're going to be benefiting from his research on an ongoing basis as well. That can help us, again, update certain things in our planning procedures.
And as Mr. Teixeira pointed out, this will close a gap that we've had with identifying the likely or potential dispersion of releases from the plant. So it's definitely going to provide additional tools and capability for our office, or Civil Defense Office, with being able to identify the risk the community is at when there is a potential release and how that release impacts the community, and guide what actions we would direct the community to take, whether it's shelter in place or the need to evacuate. So it's definitely going to provide that tool, as well as let's support the proposed health study with what is the impact the community has experienced, as well as what could be experienced with a release. So thank you.
And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth on this matter now before the Planning Commission?
Yes.
Very well.
PGV released 39 pounds of hydrogen sulfide during Tropical Storm Isel, sickening over 130 people. The samplers failed to detect any problem, partly because PGV lost power and had no backup power for the samplers. This despite the common knowledge that if PGV lost power, a toxic release could be triggered. At first, PGV and Department of Health, DOH, denied any problem. DOH finally acknowledged the problem and fined PGV a pittance, $23,700. PGV in turn said it planned to appeal. No one offered any meaningful special assistance to people who were sickened. Currently, there are too few air samplers around PGV, probably cited too high to detect hydrogen sulfide, which tends to remain down near the ground. Data from the samplers is averaged over 1-hour periods, so they might miss spikes. There's no quality control to determine if samplers are correctly calibrated or even if they're working. No one is regulating airborne silica particulates from PGV. Little information is released to the public about chemicals other than hydrogen sulfide that PGV is releasing into the air. And DOH does not require PGV to file toxic release inventory reports. It's a polluter's dream, a neighborhood's nightmare, and part of 35 years of environmental injustice. Funding today's request will provide a sound basis for an updated and meaningful emergency response plan, basis for future air monitoring, and basis for the geothermal public health study.
And we could get to a point where the neighborhood could know real time what's happening at the plant. For example, if there's a release, what's happening. Many of you may have visited Volcano National Park. They have a system where they know what's happening with the bog, which is a much bigger problem because it's dispersed over a larger area. And they know which areas are going to have problems. In Ezell, not only did we not know, there was no siren, there was basically a friend of mine called me was when I found out that the plant had a problem. And it took, as you know, Daryl can tell you, the fire people weren't able to get out.
One of the basic problems we have with PGV is that it's a major industrial facility located in an urban cluster. In other words, there are people living right outside the gate, right outside the perimeter of PGV, within a few hundred meters. And these are areas where toxic gases can be released at PGV and pass through the residential area within a few minutes. You know, it doesn't take more than 5 or 10 minutes for whatever is released at PGV to get outside the perimeter and into the community. And that is the crux of the problem. We need to understand what conditions, under what conditions the public is exposed to these kinds of issues. Now, PGV will tell you that it's a closed-loop system and they don't release toxic gases. And that's true most of the time. You know, 99.9% of the time that is true. However, that is not always the case. Seals fail, things happen, upset conditions occur, and it's under those very specific conditions where we have problems. The thing gets away from them every once in a while, basically. And we need to have civil defense be able to respond in an appropriate way. We need the community to be able to understand what's happening and respond appropriately when these upset conditions occur.
My name is Dr. Stephen Businger. I'm a professor and chair of the Atmospheric Science Department at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I have been doing dispersion modeling for 30 years. I'm also a fellow of the AGU and a fellow of the AMS. I think that Chris has really given a nice outline of what it is we hope to accomplish. I have been doing dispersion modeling of the VOG plume and to make that available publicly online. You may be familiar rather with that model. And that model started in 2010 and it's been validated over time. And as Chris mentioned, it's very important for us to validate these dispersion models so that we get a tool that really provides guidance to the stakeholders, including the community, civil defense, and so on, and the health department.
First, I want to talk about Chris. You were really lucky to have a guy like that. He worked for the Army for many years on their chemical weapons disposal monitoring. And he was the head of that program. And he's doing this all as a voluntary effort. So the county is very, very lucky. We're saving a lot of money. We can have a state-of-the-art system here. I hope you guys will pay attention to that. And as Dwayne can verify, when this whole permitting process went into place, that's what these funds were for. And these funds have been used for things like bus stops and paving roads and other things that I don't think they were intended for. So I hope that we can now find the money after 35 years, really, since HPA, to finally have some kind of monitoring program that the community will have confidence in. And that program, as Chris said, is going to have to be source monitoring, because that's a standard for the industry. That's how they do it in almost all the industries. And so that's what they have now with a few stationary samplers doesn't work. And I've been there, like I said, for 35 years. There's been 18 declared civil defense emergencies at that power plant. And I don't think that there's another power plant for sure in the state of Hawaii that can come close to anything like that. I think PGV should strongly support source monitoring in this, because their position has been that we're not causing a problem, and but there's no data to prove that. So from PGV's point of view, from the community's point of view, we need to have this information.
I move that the claim for $362,719 be approved based on the claim adjuster's findings and recommendations, which shall be adopted.
Thank you, Commissioner
second.
Ikeda. Second by Commissioner Hinkle. Commissioners, any discussion? Hearing none. Jeff, could you please roll call the vote?
Could I just get clarification on the second, Commissioner Dela Cruz?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll take the roll call. Commissioner Ikeda,
Aye.
Commissioner Dela Cruz,
Aye.
Commissioner Clarkson,
Aye.
Commissioner Henkel,
Aye.
Commissioner Moses, and Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
The motion passes 6-0.
Thank you, Mr. Petrici. Moving to unfinished business, it's number 4 on